Hey everyone, Skull 902 here, and I'm also here with my memory lane buddies. That's not my usual intro for the show, but you know what? I've been having a terrible day, so fuck it. Uh, this is Memory Lane Buddies. This is episode 4. We're going to be talking about our earliest video game experiences, and I've got a hefty party here with me today. In order of the Discord call, we've got Cat Cooper.
Hi.
We have Lost Leader.
Hey, howdy everyone, Losty here. Back in
Uh,
action after surgery attraction.
oh yeah. We've got Rabid Sonic Fan.
Her.
Tails the Power 71.
Sup?
Making his 100th live stream appearance today, actually, is that hat guy.
Oh, okay, that's pretty fun, I guess.
Woo!
And then we also have Trippy Boy.
Nuh-uh. Oh, well.
Fuck you mean, nuh-uh?
Okay, I guess Trip is actually just a figment of my imagination here today. So, again, we're just going to be talking about our earliest video game experiences. Maybe not necessarily entirely how we got into video games. I know from my perspective, if you're watching my channel, you've probably heard my story a million times. But it really depends on the person. So we'll get through it, topic by topic here. This is going to be a bit of a truncated episode due to how terrible of a day it's been for me, and I do apologize for that. But hopefully still a good experience. Uh, everyone, our first topic here is the first games that you remember playing. Now, I'll just start things off here because, like I said before, uh, everyone just kind of like who watches my channel, they already kind of know like the Super Nintendo story. That's how I got into video games. But there's actually a bit more to it before then. When I was 4, we had an NES, and it had a good few games on it, but we didn't have it for very long. And I can tell you right now that we weren't really interested in anything other than Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game. Uh, I do remember playing that a fair bit with my older brother. Um, and I think we might have also had Godzilla because I remember that too. I only remember my older brother playing it like one time, and he kept like falling through the ground. I don't know if that's an actual glitch that can occur in that game, but uh, I don't know. Uh, but there was that. And I seem to also remember one of my dad's friends. We would visit her regularly. She had a PlayStation. I remember playing a racing game on there, which must have been a multi-tap one because it was 4 player. I remember. Uh, and then like basically my only other early video game memory aside from the Super Nintendo one, except for another point that I'll get to later, is like it must have been like I don't know, it wasn't a Chuck E. Cheese, but it was like some similar place where they had like the arcade games and the playground and shit. Uh, I remember being there with my cousins, and I wanted to try out this like motorcycle game, and the motorcycle would like rock and sway while you were on it. I was way too young to be playing that game. I got thrown from the thing,
Oh, dang.
and and my 3-year-old little heart couldn't take it. You know, I I got hurt. Not terribly or anything, but yeah. So that's basically all my memory of video games and playing games and whatnot, from uh, from the years before I really became a gamer, uh, with one exception, and again we'll get back to it later. Uh, so for anyone else, let's start with Rabid. Uh, Earliest video games?
Well, let's see. The first gaming console thingy I had was a Game Boy Color back when I was 5 years old. and the very first game I played on it was Winnie the Pooh and the fucking Wizard. And I think
Rated M for mature.
rated M for mature. It was the most hardcore Pooh game ever made. And then Eeyore.
He's got like the arm spikes on him, and he's got
Yeah.
like a mohawk.
Yeah, they did it like they were 30 years ahead of the curve in terms of horror-related Pooh content. But all seriousness, it's like called Adventures in the 100-Acre Wood or some shit like that. It was like a board game type thing. Wasn't that good.
And
I
then
guess this all kind
then
of
right after that,
Go
he
on.
was like, "Video games suck. I'm never doing that again. That wasn't really fun." And he never did it again. And now we're here.
surprisingly not. I don't remember if it was like the second game, but like one of the first ones I played after that was Super Mario Brothers Deluxe, and I guess that kind of crosses over into the next topic because that's like the first Mario's the first video game exclusive franchise I became a fan of as a result of that.
Nice. So we got Rabid. How about Trip?
Oh, so I honestly can't say what the first game I remember playing is because it could be a number of things, but I can tell you I think I've told you the story a couple times on stream. Skull, like the first game I ever like consciously became in contact with, I guess. Um the first experience that I like had with the game, knowing what it was. So when I was like 4 or 5, I went to a friend's house in the middle of the woods because that's all there is here in Arkansas. Um, and I remember it was like nighttime, and it was me and these 2 kids at their house, and they're like, "Hey, you wanna play some video games?" I was like, "Sure." I kind of know what that is, but like I don't know what game we can play. And then they say, "Oh, how about we play this game? It's called Donkey Kong." I'm like, Donkey Kong. I have no idea what a Kong is, but I know what a donkey is. Is it going to be a weird game about some ugly looking donkey? All of a sudden, I start hearing monkey sounds, and then this familiar song called the DK Rap starts playing. Um, from then on out, I was ready for video games, considering that the first thing I ever experienced in a video game is the iconic DK Rap. Uh, um, I I loved it.
It was your
It was it,
gateway to memes.
it really was. It like it exceeded my expectations in the fact where I didn't expect for it to be a game about a big old low poly gorilla running around collecting golden bananas, and it was quite delightful for as kind of somewhat mediocre of a game it is. It was great. Um, but in terms of like actually playing, I think the first thing I had before I even got like a Wii or anything, I had like this plug and play. It was like a 16-bit SpongeBob thing.
Oh,
Where
with the nose joystick, I had that
Yes.
thing. Yeah.
Yes. I remember. I feel like I played that a lot. I sucked at it because I was like 5 and really stupid, but it was really really fun. And it kind of just took off from there. Getting to play bangers like when I got a Wii for Christmas and playing Wii Sports, going crazy with that, and then later getting Mario Galaxy. Absolute bangers, and yeah, it was a good time being a kid.
Cheer, buddy.
To clarify, though, your
I'm gonna be
first
real with
game.
you for a minute. I envy not having the DK rap be my very first exposure to video games.
So to clarify, though, your first video game was Donkey Kong 64, not Donkey Kong.
Yeah, they called it Donkey Kong. I specifically remember them saying it was called Donkey Kong, and but yeah,
Here little 4-year-old Trip was thinking that maybe it had something to do with Donkey from Shrek, and then he was disappointed until the DK rap started.
Sort of. I didn't. I don't think I even knew what Shrek was, but I thought it was gonna be about like a donkey, like a jackass. But no, it was actually more. It had more awesomeness than that.
Donkey.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from Trip's era in the mid 2000s all the way to TTP's way back when, what's your first exposure to video games?
So I've shared this story. Actually, I shared it back in the January episode of Memory Lane Buddies. But just to recap, and I can expand on this a little bit. So, just starting with probably what most everybody knows. My parents got me a NES in 1988, and so I grew up. My first video game experience was Super Mario Bros. And Duck Hunt. And I just remember being really fascinated with the light gun. Just, I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I'm like, how does this thing work? I was so confused as a kid. Like, how does this thing work? How am I getting the ducks? Like, this is insane. And but nonetheless, I had a blast with it. That was that was wonderful. And yeah, and my parents just every so often just kept getting me video game consoles, and I still have that NES. It still works, and I still have all the games for it and original controllers and everything, including the controller that our dog way back when chewed the controller cable, and my dad was able to fix it. So yeah, I still have the the electrical tape on it from 1990. But yeah, it still works. So that was, for me at least, kind of my first exposure to video games. But talking about friends, I remember, like, outside of the NES, I was at a friend's house who was a little bit older than me, so I'd say more so a family friend. They had an Atari, and I don't remember which one it was. I want to say it was the 2600, but I could be wrong on that. And I just remember playing old school, like, tennis game on that thing, and I'm like, okay, this is actually pretty cool. And I found it really fascinating. This was probably, I want to say maybe about 1991, 1992, somewhere around there, when this happened. And I have fond memories just playing it and really enjoying it. And Pong, of course. That was, that was the staple. So I know it makes me sound really old, but my gosh, like, that was my first really exposures to video games, and specifically Nintendo and Atari. And I there's others as well, but kind of like what Skull said earlier, I will save it for the next topic. But yeah, that's my story, at least my intro to video games.
Cheer, buddy. All right, Kat, it's your turn.
Oh boy. Okay. God. First early introduction. Okay, I was like, I want to say 3 or 4, and my parents had gotten a Sega Genesis for themselves, but I vividly remember one afternoon I came into their bedroom. That's where they had the Genesis, and they had Sonic 2 loaded up. I don't know if they were planning to play it or if they had gotten it for me, but, like, I just sat down and picked up the controller and just started playing it. And I just remember, like, racing through Emerald Hill Zone for hours because I was 4. I wasn't getting very far in the game. I didn't get past Chemical Plant. I think I was until I was a little older. But yeah, just being like doing a little dance to the zone's music and being absolutely captivated by that little two-tailed fox. I think Skull's heard the story like 5 times, but
Yeah, probably not actually in this level of detail. But uh, yeah.
yeah. Um, Sonic 3 came shortly after that, I think. So I think it was really the Sonic franchise that was my early introduction to video games.
Cool, cool. Uh, so Lost. What was your first exposure to video games?
Well, I will say this much. I am on the older side along with TTP here. And my parents have claimed that when I was really young, like 2 years old or some such, I would play the Super Mario Brothers, the first one, and kind of imitate the whole entire moves and see if I could do them on the controller. But I don't remember anything of that. What I do remember though is watching the wizard and mimicking the exact styles of what the wizard did in Super Mario Brothers 3. Which, if you all aren't familiar with that movie, yeah, that was the first exposure of Super Mario Brothers 3 to the Western world. Um, and you actually got to see them get the whistles from the individual places that you would get them. So my first real remembering of playing a video game is doing exactly that with Super Mario Brothers 3, of just mimicking exactly what I saw in the wizard, getting those whistles to transport to the various other worlds, and I would just be stuck on the last world going like, why is it so hard? Because, I was a dumb kid that was not able to like get past this.
Hmm.
But that was really my first introduction towards gaming as a whole, which I find very funny because I'm not a big fan of movies, but hey, the wizard is something else, I'll say that much.
Lost starting off trying to win Video Armageddon. And then we have Josh. What was your first exposure to video games?
Okay, so I have a multifaceted first exposure to video games because it started with Smash Bros. On the N64 was the first video game that I ever owned, and then, but also, sorry, let me step back a second. But also, at the time, I was a very young child. I went to elementary school, and I was friends with the lady that drove us there, the bus driver that drove us there. And so, on occasion, on the weekends, when there was no school, I would get to go over to her house, and she had a Super Nintendo at her house, right? And so, the first video game that I I think I've ever played was Mario World on her Super Nintendo. So I knew who Mario was by the time I got Smash Bros. For the N64, but I didn't know who anybody else in that cast was. Still, it was pretty fun. And that was the first little roundabout for video games that I had. Was I guess my first experience was Mario World, and then I had Smash Bros.
Mario World, goated. Uh, so with that, we're gonna move on to our next topic here is the first video game franchise that we became a fan of and any associated memories with that. Some of us have already kind of delved into it, but I'll give everyone a chance to give their answer, of course. Um, for me personally, I think like for the games themselves, I would still probably say Mario. Like the games themselves were what brought me into Mario, brought me into gaming as a whole. But just like the franchise in general, uh, when Pokemon blew up, that was just something I think everybody in my area was into. Uh, the anime. the video games, which I personally didn't get to play actually for some time. My two brothers had Game Boys, and I just didn't get one for another couple years afterward. Uh, and then even then, I didn't get a copy of any Pokemon game. So I was left pretty stranded in that department. But uh, the anime was big. We had like videotapes of it and stuff. There were various books. Um, and like toys, the trading card game, which I had a little talk with on TTP stream yesterday actually about that. Like my brothers and I like Pokemon's a bit of a complicated game, especially for kids. Uh, so like we collected the cards, but like purely for the art. Uh, but it was fun getting packs and stuff. Pokemon would be like my answer for that, just in general. Uh, Mario for the games, but just like Pokemon as a whole. Yeah. Kat, I know that you said Sonic, but is there anything else that you'd like to add to that?
I can't really say so. Like Sonic is where it all started because I didn't get into Pokemon or anything like that until I was already a teenager.
Gotcha, gotcha. Uh, Rabbit, it's sort of the same thing. I would believe with Mario, right?
I can't believe you stole what I was gonna say. But yeah, it's Mario and Pokemon, because, like, it was the exact right age for it, and it was fucking everywhere at the time.
Oh yeah.
You couldn't, like, walk anywhere without tripping over a Pokemon thing.
Come to think of it, actually, uh, do you remember like when you first discovered Pokemon? Because it's suddenly
I do.
flashing back to me now. Uh, that like I think it was like in the Kohl's of like the local shopping mall. Like they had like a little display with a bunch of Pokemon plushes there, and I think that might have been my first experience with Pokemon.
I for me, my mom and I used to go to Blockbuster every Friday. That certainly dates me for a lot of people.
Oh
And
yeah.
one day I saw this Pokemon thing, VHS tape over there. I was like, "Ooh, what's this all about?"
Ah,
So
Blockbuster.
yeah, we rented it, and I like popped it in the VCR. I was like, oh, my life changed forever. And then
Uh,
like I devoured like all the trading cards and the games, and I saw the movies and shit.
nice. Uh, Lost. How about you? Like, what was your first like franchise that you became a fan of?
Enough, despite having played the Mario Brothers, I wouldn't say that really registered for me because the video game franchise I actually got like really interested in when I was younger was Sonic, and that was because my dad had a Game Gear. He bought an NES, a Game Gear, and eventually a Super Nintendo, and that's kind of what we had around the household. And the Game Gear game, specifically Sonic 2, because that's the one that um, came with it, fascinated me the most. I love that little blue dude. I love the way that everything looked. The sound effects are still fresh in my mind with how crisp they are. And when we finally got Sonic Triple Trouble, um, I couldn't keep my hands off that Game Gear, which is sad because my dad actually got that for a Montana football game that he wanted to play. But that just turned out to be my game console after that. Triple Triple was when I was introduced to Knuckles, and after learning a bit, finding out that Sonic had a cartoon, The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, I kind of went rampant with the whole entire like being a fan of Sonic, despite never having a Genesis. Until I want to say I was 30 years old, I didn't have a Genesis,
Uh,
and it's just kind of like settled with me since that. Just Sonic's been a big part of my life, and the Sega Dreamcast was kind of the first console I actually got to play a mainline Sonic game for the first time when it was released.
Man. So, interesting that it was the Game Gear, because I think like a lot of others, especially from around that time, would have been sucked in by like the Genesis games. But hey,
I didn't have a Genesis. We were a
yeah,
Super
yeah,
Nintendo family, and back then you chose. There was a line drawn.
fair enough. That makes sense.
Mm.
So TTP, how about you?
Yeah. So for me, it really the franchise that I fell in love with, and that like I became uh, just really addicted to. Like so, I liked Mario and stuff. I enjoyed it. And it was fun to play, and I did keep going back and playing it because my parents did get me Super Mario Bros. 2 and 3 for the NES, and so I would play those games, and then in 1991, Christmas 1991, my parents got me Sega Genesis with Sonic the Hedgehog. And I was like, okay, like, all right, something different, a new gaming console. Let's go. Let's check this out. And, let's just say it was an experience for a 7-year-old. I I experienced what the internet calls today rage quitting. Hardcore because of Labyrinth Zone. And I still don't like it, even though I can beat it now. it took
You're so valid for that.
it took 30 years, but I can beat it.
It's a rough one.
I feel that so much. So much.
Oh, and just I just remember being a kid struggling so hard, but yet I always kept finding myself coming back to it. And then I still felt I was more proficient with Mario. I at least with Mario, I felt like I could make forward progression in Mario, unlike Sonic because of Labyrinth Zone. That changed in 92 when my parents also for Christmas got me Sonic 2. And that changed and we got Tails. And I fell in love with Tails hardcore right away. And Tails just became so relatable to me. I could not get enough information about that fox boy. And this was this was pre-internet, so I couldn't just like go to Wikipedia and read all about Miles Tails per hour. Like that's not good. Yeah.
Surprise, Tales of Prowler 71. That Tails was your favorite your favorite character.
Yeah,
Would have never guessed.
totally
not at all.
could not possibly infer from anything that he does that
No,
Tails would have been
no.
its favorite.
Not at all. Not at all. Spoiler. Anyway, so I always found myself coming back to Mario because I could make the more progress it felt like. But then 92 happened, we got Sonic 2, which became the very first video game I ever beat as a kid. I still don't know how, but I did it. Without any of the Chaos Emeralds, I might add. And actually, it wasn't until last year I was actually able to successfully beat all the special stages in Sonic 2, and for the first time in my life, actually get all 7 Chaos Emeralds. So that was a neat experience, and part of the reason I struggled with that is being legally blind. So there was accessibility related stuff that I had to work through, but I still had a great time. And I found those games like these 2D side scrollers, I found them just really nice, easy to play. I'm like, wow, like my vision sucks, but I can still play these games. Not to mention my cousin, who I've been talking about a lot over the last 24 hours. My cousin, Silver, growing up together, having a good, close relationship with him, also had a Sega Genesis. And watching him play Sonic 2, also a big Sonic fan, and still is to this day. Watching him beat Sonic 2 as a kid was just awe-inspiring to me. I'm like, because I always considered my cousin to be the gamer god, and just any video game he touched, he could beat. And I was like, I would love to be that someday. That is so cool. Which is why I spent a lot of time grinding Sonic 2 to beat Sonic 2 as a kid. I wish I could have had it recorded, but it was just me in the room. But still, that was still a really neat experience. And yeah, that was a lot of fun. And you talked about Pokemon. I'm just gonna throw this in since Pokemon's been discussed. I remember getting into the TCG back in '96, and I was, let me think here. How old was I in '96? 12? Yeah, I was 12. So I was kind of at about that right age for Pokemon, and I just fell in love with it. I started getting the trading cards and tried to figure out the trading card game, but oh my god, like what a nightmare trying to understand the Pokemon TCG and all the rule sets and stuff. I can understand why like pretty much everybody had like their own house rules for the TCG. But yeah, so that was my Pokemon experience. And then in '98 when we got the anime, I just, again fell in love with it and kept up with it until the Alolan region shows Sun and Moon, and that's it. Yeah, just thought I'd throw my 2 cents in on the Pokemon since it came up.
Gotcha. Before we move on to our next person here, James D. Morris, thank you for uh, the member message. Member for 7 months. It doesn't say anything, but I do appreciate the continued support, my dude. Uh, Josh, what was your first franchise? I have a feeling it's going to be Mario.
You see, it was Mario as a technicality. Mario was my first franchise that I've talked about now. But I kind of grew into Mario and Sonic at exactly the same time. Because I think I grew up at what is objectively the best time to get into Sonic, which is when Sega had just kind of backed out of the console war thing and were porting all the Sonic games to GameCube. So I got basically everything at the exact same time. There was the Sonic Adventure 2 battle came first, I believe. Then there was Adventure DX, and then, but also, there was all the older games as part of the Mega Collection at pretty well like a year or two apart from each other. So I kind of got everything at once, essentially.
Same here, yeah.
Yeah, it was a very accessible time, I think, for people looking to get into Sonic.
Yeah, and it's just not that easy anymore. Like, there are a few collections now, I guess, that have a few things, but it's not everything, and it's not all these extra little things they did too with the movies and so on.
We still have yet to see like everything from like say Jim's collection be re-released. No,
Yeah.
at least not as like part of another game or something.
Anyway, with Mario has always kind of been my like the guy that I like, and yeah, opening up with Mario World was, I would say, like, everybody says it's either Mario 3 or Mario World that is the best entry point to Mario. But I do have a softer spot for Mario World. And then, of course, there was Mario 64 that I got after. So I got, the thing where everybody was like, oh, he's 3D now. You could go forward, right? You could go up.
Yeah.
I got that, like, right after Mario World. Like a month after Mario World. And so it still hit, but there wasn't as much build up as a lot of people got at the time.
Yeah, I remember when 3D was like the big new exciting thing for sure. Uh, Trip, what was the first franchise you got into as a fan?
This might be a shocker, but it was Mario.
Oh my
But it
God.
was it was kind of a combination of a couple things. I did mention like how like Mario Galaxy was one of the first games I recall like playing, at least something that I like a game that I owned and played. That kind of transitioned to um, so I met some friends at church of all places, the who happened to be like the pastor's sons. And if you ever hear me describe me doing something with quote unquote the boys, those are who I'm talking about because we're still friends to this day, like 15 or so, over 15 years later. Um,
So you went up to them and they were like, "Hey man, you like Mario? Have you heard of Mario's Pond?"
you know, not far off from one of our first conversations, but not quite. I'll tell you later. Um, so they kind of they it slowly introduced me to a few things. They mainly kind of like taught me about Mario because obviously Mario is Mario, and it's the big old franchise that everyone seems to love. Then one day, I recall we were at this like mom and pop version of a blockbuster that we had in town called I think it was called Movie Gallery. We were renting like we were trying to figure out what game that we should rent or buy for the Wii. And then lo and behold, there's this newer game called Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, which of all games, that was my introduction to Sonic. It could have been worse. It was either the Olympic Games or some promo for Sonic Underground that I saw on a Mario Super Show DVD. One of those two. I'm hoping it's the former. Um, so it's a mixture between Mario and Sonic. They both had both franchises had pretty big impacts on me childhood. A lot of memories, countless hours playing different Sonic games with the boys. Like we many times we'd laugh our asses off looking at the comic book covers on Sonic Mega Collection or vibing playing games like Sonic CD or Sonic the Fighters in Gems Collection or just a plethora of other games. I remember we played a lot of Sonic Riders trying to beat the campaign mode. Um, I mean, I could go on and waste a whole lot of time talking about that. So um, I guess first franchise that I became a fan of officially uh, was was Mario, and then that also like coexisted with Sonic after I was um, exposed to that for the first time. Although growing up in the 2000s wasn't a great time to be introduced to Sonic because I would I wasn't introduced to the OG like 16-bit games. I first played like the Olympic games. That was fun. But then the other games that I could play because I only had a Wii at the time were like Secret Rings and Unleashed, which when you're a kid, those games are fun on their own, but obviously not everyone looks back on those fondly as like the best Sonic games. But I mean, I've experienced pretty much everything that you can as both a Mario and a Sonic fan. Um, but going back to what you said, Skull, this is like almost verbatim how my friend Nate recalls our very first conversation when we were 4. Apparently, he'd be like, "Hey, it's nice to meet you. I really like Mario and Sonic." And I guess for some reason I was like, "Yeah, I don't know what those are. I like Bible Man." So, but yeah,
Beautiful. Uh, So our next topic here is like something that we remember from around the time, like in terms of like exposure to video games or how it was like to play video games, something or like something like that. Some like from around the time that I was first introduced to video games. Uh, I guess what I'll say is like an ad, for instance. Uh, like the very first video game related ad that I can recall is one of the absolute goats, the Mario Got Milk commercial. Uh, when that one was common on TV, I always really looked forward to seeing it. I thought like the mix of the computer animation and live action was really fun. uh, Mario drinking the milk and getting bigger, and
I
then
just
and
I
then
just
he.
want to comment something about that specifically. That ad is actually a lie. Milk does not help your bones grow. That's all I want to say.
Well, it helped Mario. God damn it! He could climb in wet dry world or whatever it's called. He could get through it
Poser.
now. Uh, so like from around the time that I was first exposed to video games, that's something that I remember from back then. Um, I think in the January episode, TTP Lost and I did like kind of cover some things about like how exciting it was to say discover something new in a video game, like purely through playing it and not like looking it up on the internet or through a magazine if that was the way that you did it or whatever. Um, so I personally will refrain from mentioning anything like that, especially since it was like a few years later. But for anyone else, like around the time that you first like again got your like first exposure to video games, like just something kind of like that you remember. We'll go with Josh.
Oh, is it because you saw me on mute?
Uh, it was more so more so because I was thinking about how you called me a poser, and so I wanted to
What you
put you
want
on
me
the
to,
spot.
you want me to Well, listen, I wrote like 5 paragraphs for this entire show, so you can't put me on the spot that much. Okay, so let's go back to the Mario Got Milk ad, because one of my first memories of that thing was trying desperately to find it on the internet. And back then, right, there wasn't, you could look it up on YouTube, you could look it up wherever. Somebody had to upload a rip of that thing to their own website, and you were lucky to find some crusty ass 240p rip of this commercial that somebody put on their website at an extremely big crunch thing, because bandwidth and all that back in the early days of the internet, right? But I did find it, and I liked it. I liked having the crusty 240p rip that I found. And then when I eventually saw it the way it was on TV later, I was like, man, you know?
This is
But
clean.
yeah. Okay, so there's a couple of other things I want to say though before we move on. The 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 other thing I remember about video games as like an ancillary thing around video games was definitely magazine ads. And I wasn't a huge console war guy because, again, I got really into Sonic and stuff after they had already kind of come over to Nintendo. But I did have a lot of the console wars culture distilled in me because I saw a lot of the commercials and so on. That was a fun time to just kind of be around, even though I wasn't really in it. And uh, print ads and magazines kind of were like, oh, get that guy, at the time. But there was still one ad that I really enjoyed that I want to talk about, which is a Paper Mario ad where it's Paper Mario and he's on the page and there's like scissor cut lines around him and it says free demo on it.
Ah,
That
yeah.
was my favorite print ad. I think that was a genius
I
concept.
remember that. That was really cutesy. It's a really
Yeah.
cutesy ad.
I remember the TV ad for the original Paper Mario. This was before like just a little before I truly got into video games, but I remember liking that commercial so much that I only saw it like 2 or 3 times on TV, but I remember acting it out once. Uh,
And then if I could briefly do a little bit of what was going to be topic 2, because I did write this down also. Topic 3 even. Oh no, it was topic 2, never mind, it's not important. The other thing that was important to me about video games is that they became a deep family bonding thing for me. I really enjoyed that. My grandma had Tetris on an old gray brick Game Boy, and Taylor knows now that I really enjoy the gray brick Game Boy version of Tetris. I'll get like 100 lines, 120 lines, and then I'll look up from the screen and like half an hour will have gone by. And the other thing I remember a lot about video games and being family bonding moments was because my mom was really good at Dr. Mario 64. Like, she was insanely good at Dr. Mario 64, even though she hasn't ever really played video games before or since. I've never seen anything like it.
oh yeah. That would also coincide with like the you mentioned Paper Mario before the camping trip with Paper Mario.
I did, yeah. We used to bring my N64 on the long camping trips we used to do. And the thing I mentioned about Paper Mario for that was because I had a hard time beating the desert temple area back when I was a little boy, and I had to have my father help me with it. That was a pretty decent moment for me also.
Yeah, bunny. Uh, let's go on over to Lost, but before then, a little fact check. Calcium does help bone development and density, and milk and other dairy products are, in fact, great sources for calcium. So, Lost, something.
They are not. They are
Yes,
not.
they
Do
are.
not make me get
Thank
into
you,
this.
Skull.
I
Thank you.
I
They're not.
literally just looked it up for fact checking reasons.
You
And
have to be under a certain age for any kind of milk development to actually help you. Aside from that, you're not supposed to really be drinking milk.
fake
That's
news.
not something you should be doing.
Uh, Fake news. So, what is your
Listen.
video game
I'm
memories
trying
from
to
around that
inform
time?
people on this stuff. Nah, you
Can
started
we
this
have a
fight.
milk debate later, please?
This is not the dairy podcast. Let's move on,
No,
please.
yeah.
My goodness gracious, I was attacked here. I was outsourced here. My goodness. Want to inform people. Regardless,
Well, you did it wrong, so move on.
I didn't. I did not. The bigger point being here, what I remember most in my early days of video game stuff and whatnot was mostly going to Walmarts and Targets and going to those electrical kiosk places, and they'd often like have it to where like it was sort of surrounded itself, so like it was its own little individual island. So like a lot of parents could just kind of like dump their kid off there while they go off and do whatever the hell they're gonna do for shopping, and that's what I would be doing like half the time. Was just every time they'd take me to the store, I would be doing that and whatnot. And that was the majority of time that I've had in various Walmarts and Targets, was playing things like Super Mario World 2 and looking up the new consoles and games and magazines that they had going on there. But there was also like other places like KB Toys, which is a really old ass store does not exist anymore. And it was just basically like a mini version of what would be considered Toys R Us. But they actually have this nice little like side section where just you could buy a bunch of games. They were around until I want to say the PS2 era. I think around the PS2 era they actually ended up vanishing. Suffice to say, getting ads for these various places and whatnot was always a highlight, especially during Christmas time, because you could just pick out which games you want, and like you kind of just like give it to your parents, and they'd be like, "Okay, well we'll think about it," and they'll get you a game depending on what you picked and whatnot. And it was fairly interesting in that regard. to always go through those ads and whatnot. And I even gave an ad to Skulls earlier of how those old ads were. They were just some of the oldest, weirdest things that just did not make sense, but they're like really nice little old ads that were captivating in a colorful way.
Gotta love the catalogs.
Yeah.
I am showing that one on screen right now. So this one's for like Target. It looks to be from like around 1989, maybe 90. It's showing like a Game Boy, an NES action set, a big old copy of Tetris, and other assorted games off to the side. Uh, so so you would say that's sort of like your extracurricular video game experience and stuff from around then, Lost.
Yeah, it was mostly the ads and getting dumped off those electric kiosks just to like play those games and whatnot.
Gotcha,
That was
gotcha.
the vast majority of my thing.
Yeah. So Kat, how about you? Any like ads or something about the experience of playing from around then?
No ads or anything like that. All I remember is that so my parents have always been big gamers. The Sega Genesis, the PS1, the PS2. But they usually got their game recommendations from friends of theirs who I affectionately call my not blood related aunt and uncle. Um, and we were at their house like all the time, like almost every weekend. They'd be up all night playing like poker and stuff. And my siblings and I, and later on their kids, our cousins, if you were, would be in the living room playing. And the one game I can remember us all playing together or pretending to play together is that Hit and Run the Simpsons game for the PS2.
Yes.
Oh
Oh
man,
my god, that game was something.
The Simpsons GTA, holy shit.
Yeah. But
Now,
Uh,
yeah.
when you say pretending to play together, what does that mean?
Well, their kids were a lot younger than my siblings and I, like almost, I want to say like almost 10 years or so. So they were little ones.
Come to think of it, actually, you are like a fair bit older than like all your other siblings. Uh, and I know I've told you before that I always pictured you as like the like uh, good model citizen older sibling and teaching your youngers how to play video games and stuff like that. Uh, so is that basically true to life, or how did that go?
I'd say that's pretty accurate. Like my siblings would sit around watching me play like the Sonic Heroes or, whatever other games we had. There were quite a few. I can't remember off the top of my head, but like and eventually once they were old enough to understand like how to use the controller and not throw it at each other. That's a story for another day. um they play them when I wasn't around, and if I was around and they got stuck, they'd be like, "Hey, Cat, can you come help us, please?" So,
Well, that's interesting though that you were like, you got your introduction off of your parents and then they got their introduction off of you.
yeah.
Uh, so yeah. Let's see here. Rabid. We'll go to you next. Any like again sort of extracurricular video game related anything from around the time that you got into it?
Uh, yeah. Um, there's of course the got redacted ad that you mentioned.
Oh, cute.
And
I noticed Trip put new title Milk Lane Buddies in the chat here, and I thought that was Spidey for a second because that sounds like a comment that Spidey would write.
I've been learning from him, I guess.
I gotta be watching you, Dad.
I was also a pretty big subscriber of Nintendo Power until that died. That's how I got my video game news primarily for a few years, because going to look up stuff on the internet wasn't that big a thing yet. Because dial-up is still a thing.
Yeah, I'm a little sad that magazines aren't a thing anymore. Those Nintendo Power magazines are really fun.
Yeah,
They were.
also had guides and stuff too, so that's handy if you happen to have the particular game that's in those issues.
Yeah. Man. We this is more so after I got into video games, so not around the time I was first introduced or anything, but I do remember frequenting what was known for the first 9 months or so after I got into gaming. It was Funko Land at the time, and then they got converted into GameStops. But my dad, my dad did get us like a year's subscription to Game Informer, so it was fun to get the new one each month and have a look see at what they were talking about and all that.
Yeah, I also had Game Pro for a little bit. Don't know if anybody knows that one.
I've definitely heard of it.
Oh no, I know about it. I read all the Gex news on Game Pro. You feel me?
Sick.
uh,
The store I had before it was eaten by GameStop was called Software, which is a pretty generic sounding name.
Very
But
generic.
it had this neon sign and everything.
So it was a lot of magazines around that time for you.
Are you sure it wasn't called EB Software?
No.
Okay.
I can always put a image in the chat that nobody else can see.
So TTP, in terms of the video game extracurricular blah 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 words, how about you?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, you're talking about the ads and stuff. Like, I'm gonna start out with this first here. So growing up in a uber conservative community, like where video games are evil and stuff like that.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Oh,
It's
God.
okay. Yeah. It was very hard for me to express myself and my fandoms and geekdoms and nerddoms and everything. It was very difficult trying to find people that were into video games. I mean, they existed, but you literally, it was like prohibition. You had to hide your TV, your CRT TV and gaming consoles in the innermost closet of your house, because God forbid you own a video game system and video games in general, or play D&D and watch Disney movies and stuff like that.
Oh, don't get me started.
Yeah, we won't go there, but the point is, in terms of figuring out things pre-internet, the only time I actually discovered new stuff is if my cousin told me about it, because my cousin lived outside this bubble that I grew up in. So he would always inform me and let me know what was happening and stuff. I mean, quick side, I got to give a huge shout out to my parents, because my parents kick ass. Even though I grew up in this type of community where you could have Footloose should have been filmed here. even though I grew up in that type of community, my parents were like, yeah, you can play video games, you can watch Disney, you can do all this stuff. So huge shout out to my parents, even though my parents never really played video game. Although I did convince my dad to play GoldenEye on N64 one time. And he got sick and tired of me killing him. So he's like, I'm done. And he's never played a video game since. But, so huge shout out to my parents for, letting me be a kid and exploring video games and all that. So outside of that though, the ads, yes. In fact, prior to the going live here, I was actually looking at some of the old Sonic ads on YouTube, just so I could have some context. But going through those commercials just reminded me so much growing up at the time as Sonic was just like taking off. I think of the McDonald's toys as well, the Happy Meal toys and stuff. Oh my gosh, like the Tails Flyer toy was so cool. Just having all that stuff was just so cool. It was, and watching those ads just brought back so many memories. Like the girl tapping on the TV screen, like, Sonic, are you there? Kind of thing. And then later talking to a police officer, like, I need to report a missing hedgehog. And like, just like early 90s at its finest with ads. And then the other one, somebody, I don't remember who it was, somebody brought up the console wars and whatnot. And that made me think of one of the ads where there's a salesman trying to sell a kid a SNES, and the kid is totally laser focused on Sonic and the Sega Genesis, and the salesman is just pointing at Mario, but Mario, and the kid's just like, no, I want Sonic, and the Sega Genesis is $50 cheaper than the SNES, and the salesman just like starts crying. He's like, I give up, and it's so funny. Just
Oh man.
The whole Sega does what Nintendo don't.
Yep.
And it really is something. Like, I have no idea what wave of feelings is coming over me now that I'm like speaking with someone who consciously remembers watching that ad on TV when it was new.
Yes. It was new. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I know. And it was so good. And I'm so I'm so glad we have YouTube so I can look up like these old commercials I grew up with as a kid, and just remembering all these nostalgic moments, like after watching like the Sonic McDonald's commercials and like begging my mom, please, can we go to McDonald's so I can get like the toys? And it was like, yes, we will go. And that was always like a Friday night or Saturday night treat for us, where we'd go to McDonald's or something and get stuff. And that was, just the memories of that. The other memory I have, speaking of McDonald's, and I feel like this came up in the January episode as well. We were talking about like when McDonald's had the gaming kiosks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And our McDonald's, it wasn't quite local to me. I mean, it was the same town, but it was on the other side of town, so I didn't frequent it much. But it had, your standard play place and things like that. But it had a kiosk. It had like, I don't remember. I want to say like 6 to 8 SNESs, and one of them actually had the Mario Paint tablet thing as well. So like, I just remember like seeing a lot of advertisements for Super Nintendo all around that McDonald's and the kiosks, and getting kids to play games and stuff. And that was really cool. And I just remember sitting next to kids my age and playing Mario together. Like, not so much together, but we're sitting next to each other. We're playing different consoles on different screens, but there was just something very cool about that. And just like looking over and watching somebody that actually knew what they were doing versus here I am just making myself look like a fool, but still having a glorious time doing it. There's just something about that, like, that is just so nostalgic. And Oh man, good times. Really good times. And yeah, yeah.
Man, yeah, that really is something. I never knew, I think, before you mentioned that the like McDonald's Nintendo kiosks went back to the Super Nintendo as well. I like the only one I experienced in person was N64. I remember finding out on the internet later that they did GameCube, but I don't think I've ever seen like the Super Nintendo ones.
Yep, they did do a Super Nintendo. At least ours did. On the other side of town, they had the Super Nintendos. Um, but I think that McDonald's stopped doing that. Stopped doing the kiosk program. Not too much longer after I first started experiencing it because well, let's just say a couple kids ruined it for everybody else and they just started breaking stuff.
Oh,
And
lovely.
yeah, it uh couple kids just ruined it for everybody else, which sucked. But yeah, no, there were Super Nintendos. I have never seen a N64 kiosk in McDonald's and GameCube. I've never seen one of those. Only my local McDonald's with the Super Nintendos.
I have personally seen the GameCube ones. They looked ranched by the time that I saw them. The N64 ones were probably the most common in terms of that program, but they did have GameCube ones. Trust.
Yeah. Uh,
Gotcha.
Yeah, it was some random McDonald's in somewhere in Ohio that I experienced mine. So it wasn't like any of the local ones around me. They didn't have any video games. Uh, but yeah, it was really interesting to just see that around.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
before,
one other thing I should mention too, real quick, because again, like Pokemon keeps coming up, and you talked about Nintendo Power and stuff, and I believe it was Nintendo Power that put out this really cool article, and I wish I still had it, but I think it accidentally got thrown away, and I'm really sad because I wish I had it today. Um, it was a full colored article about Hey You Pikachu. And I freaking loved that article. And speaking of commercials, a very fond commercial I have with Hey You Pikachu is the one with the dog, and the dog is just like, I can't believe this. I'm right here, and he's talking to a Pikachu. I freaking love that ad so much.
oh man, uh, like quickly before we move on to Trip, like in terms of like print and like Hey You Pikachu, I do remember, I don't know what magazine it was or anything. I just remember seeing like a print ad for Hey You Pikachu. It was like a good suggestion was like saying, "Hey Pikachu, you want to go outside and play?" And then like a bad suggestion was like, "Hey Pikachu, do my chores." And then like the difference was that like in "Hey, let's go outside and play," like looks all happy and shit. And then like "Go do my chores," he looks pissed off.
Oh, that's funny. I never owned it. I wish I would have. Like I would have asked it questions like that too.
Man. And then the picture that Rabbit sent, the store was called Software Etc. that he went to, which was, if I do remember correctly, a national brand. So not quite as generic as just software.
Oh, software,
Um,
etc. Yeah, we had those here too, and then GameStop took them over.
yeah, indeed. So Trip, as far as like again just like video game media or ads, the experience of playing something that you remember around the time that you got into video games. Uh, which I think will be an interesting take compared to the rest of us because he grew up in like the internet era. So Trip, what's your perspective on that?
Uh, Firstly, I'd like to apologize for growing up in a different era. I know that's a big crime.
Uh,
Um,
I just said it was interesting, not making fun of
I'm
you or anything.
kidding. I'm
It's
kidding.
okay. You're the
Better.
baby of the group.
So, um, I guess starting off with ads, I don't remember seeing many video game ads, there's only a select few. Um, because I guess I was exposed to like I really got into video games in like the mid to late 2000s, so it was like in a bit of a weird era, and I guess at that point I was really only like fixated on like Mario and Sonic games, and if it was neither, I didn't know what it was. Um, so in terms of ads, I do remember getting excited seeing an ad for like Mario Super Sluggers on TV, and I still specifically remember it. It was like these two kids in like a science class, and they're doing this like a baseball sign language essentially to each other, talking about how they're gonna beat each other at the game, and then the principal, or not the principal, like the teacher, also joins in. It's like, don't waste your power up on such and such, whatever kind of pitch, and that in turn got me hyped for Mario's Super Sluggers, just because anything Mario at that time got me excited. Same thing can be said for when New Super Mario Bros. Was for the Wii was announced, because I loved the one on DS, and I was like, oh, holy cow, on the Wii. I have a Wii. I like the Wii. Yippee. Um, in those exact words. Um, I do recall. Do you guys remember that weird uh, Sonic Unleashed commercial where like
Oh
there's the
yeah.
kid playing the game and he becomes like a werewolf
Oh
with like
yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah,
I
I think I remember
remember
seeing that on like Adult Swim or something.
I gotta find that commercial on YouTube again. It's been ages.
yeah. I specifically remember seeing it on like it had to have been Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon, most likely Cartoon Network. Um, and in turn, I guess that I don't know why. I just anything I'm sure you guys can relate to this too, where if you're like so fixated on this one series when like as a kid, you see something new about to come out for it, you get super excited no matter what, you know?
Yeah.
And I kind of felt that way for anything Mario, anything Sonic. Um uh so like I was like, "Oh boy, uh Unleashed for the Wii, let's go." Um
I was a kid with autism, so yeah, I can relate.
Damn. um then I guess here's where it gets a bit different. So I was first exposed to YouTube around the early 2010s, so still kind of in its early stages. It was a different YouTube than obviously than we have now. Um, but staying on like the point of being so fixated on something, when I first found out what YouTube was, I was like, oh, I want to find any cool stuff that's of Sonic and Mario. So for some reason, what I would do, I would always type in like, um, you know, Mario live action, and I would, or like Sonic live action, something like that, and see what kind of fan made projects were made at that time, whether it be really creative or really cringy. And that's matter of fact, that's I believe how I first discovered Stupid Mario Bros. Skull. That's
Goated.
how I was introduced to the. Did you say good?
I said goated.
Oh, um, I do. Some of that stuff kind of is still stuck with me, but I don't remember the title. I do remember there was this like skit that some kids do. They had to have been like in middle school at the time, just this group of friends, where they reenacted like Smash Bros. Melee in their backyard, but the sound of the video was specifically edited to have the sound effects and music from Melee. So it kind of stuck out different instead of just a bunch of kids, you know, screaming into a, a very cheap camcorder and such. I'm man, I really could go on. I think that's also how I discovered like classics like the the cute Mario Bros. If anyone remembers those, the pioneers of the plush video like subgenre of YouTube. I think they were the first to do that actually of any kind on YouTube.
For me, it was watching a bunch of Mario Newgrounds Flash cartoons when I was way too young
Oh
to be
boy.
watching them.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole other can of worms. um oh, I nearly forgot to mention. So, since the console that I had, like the only form of video games that I had for a long time was the Wii. I think was it called the Nintendo Channel, I think, where you go into the channel and it's just a bunch of videos
Promo
and
videos and
promos.
things. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
the Nintendo channel.
Yeah, Nintendo
Yes.
Channel.
I loved that as a kid. Because I didn't really know what E3 was or anything. I didn't know how to properly search, surf the web, as they say, um, other than what I just explained to you. Um,
So that's
so
how
that
you
was
got
kind of
your information about like new releases
yes,
and stuff.
yeah. I remember that Nintendo Channel had a weekly show called Nintendo Week, which was a lot of fun. I think all of the episodes have been archived on YouTube somewhere in like a playlist, which I highly recommend if you want to just um, uh, binge watch some uh, 2000s, 2010s pure Nintendo corporation stuff. It's fun. It was a fun series. I say corporation. It didn't feel corpo at all, but it was still a fun series. And I think Nintendo Channel is uh, pretty much. I think like 90% of the announcements for new games that I heard for the first time mostly came from the Nintendo Channel. Um, the one that stuck out to me the most was when Mario Galaxy 2 was announced. I know I mentioned Galaxy 1 earlier as one of the first games I recall playing. Um, and I absolutely I was obsessed with that game as a kid. So when I heard the sequel was coming out, I was like, "Oh my god, yeah." I was excited. Uh,
I
it, it,
remember seeing the E3 that Galaxy 2 and New Super Mario Brothers Wii was announced on live on G4
Definitely
back when that
remember
was a thing.
some E3 coverage
wow.
on G4 back in the day.
Yeah.
Oh, G4.
That's one thing I envy. I think I only had cable growing up, and I didn't even know what G4 was. So even if I did have G4 on like whatever Suddenlink cable provider that I had, I never um, was exposed to any of that. Well, I wish I did because from the looks of it, aesthetically, G4 looked pretty legit. It looked sick.
I mean, it was
It
pretty
was.
like one of a kind for its time. It's a
It
specialty
was.
video game channel.
Yeah,
I would
was.
definitely say that I'm a hater of G4. I'll be real.
It was like kind of like a pretty balanced sort of like there was pretty cool shit, and then there's also some like pretty bad shit on it, especially like later on when a lot of the channel was just
Yeah.
like
I cringe.
here's a bunch of reruns of Cops and Cheaters and nothing that has to do with
Yeah.
anything video game related.
It
Yup.
was of
I
its
think the
time, for
and
better
I,
and for worse.
and then like there's also like in retrospect I remember on Twitter there was a big blow up about like this X Play review, and I watched it and I was like, wow, this show is a lot shittier than I remember it being. uh
Yeah.
it
so
definitely is only better in memory. But I will say that G4 did have a neat little show where they basically showed off various animes. But that's a different topic entirely.
yeah.
Oh yeah. But I guess to briefly close off, um, I guess this counts. I guess it or it doesn't. I do recall a lot of times going to the I think it was called like the Red Box or something where you could rent DVDs from this little box outside of like a Walmart or a McDonald's. And I would
Hmm.
always I loved getting anything I could find. So whether it was it was the Mario Super Show, or regrettably Sonic Underground, which I loved at the time, um, or even I think I got Sonic X at one
Yeah, and
point.
I remember like a good stretch of time, it was like 2 or 3 years, where like every time I looked at the red box, they always had a Sonic X DVD available.
Mm-hmm.
I want to
Nice.
have a challenge for chat here. Um, can y'all sing the Sonic Underground theme song?
Uh, I'm sure we all could, but let's not do that.
But triplets born, the throne awaits.
Wait.
So
A Seer
I
Wands
know,
and the
I
Deadly
know.
Fate.
so last thing here, special shout out to my local library, which has since been like renovated and expanded, but it used to be this really super small building. I loved renting, or I guess how they would say borrowing, quote unquote, VHS tapes from there. Special shout out, okay, first of all, to the Donkey Kong Country cartoon. Absolute gas of a show.
Oh yeah.
100% on that.
And then
We had we
a
had
little known cartoon. Um, the theme song went, I don't know, something about wanting to be the very best no one ever was. You know,
there we go. Yeah.
when you hear that for the first time as a kid, it sticks with you.
Oh, for sure.
Those
Yeah.
lyrics never leave you.
I'll be right back. I gotta go get my To Be a Master soundtrack. I'll be right back.
Understandable.
So yeah, sorry about the random rambling there. I was just kind of
Oh, you're good,
looking
buddy.
back in the old archives of the mind of the memories.
real. I
Uh,
think it's a very good thing that you pointed out that library is actually a really good source for getting games and VHSs nowadays. Believe it or not.
Dude.
I remember.
You know how I first
It's
saw the
true.
Donkey Kong Country cartoon? I
Mhm.
I rented the Legend of the Crystal Coconut tape from a fucking 7-Eleven.
7-Eleven rentals.
7-Eleven?
Interesting.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Huh.
Interesting. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of like how everyone had like different varying ways of getting video game news or seeing ads, uh, all that sort of assorted stuff from around the time that we got into video games. So our last little segment here is the fan questions. If you're a channel member at the Memory Lane Buddies viewer level, one of the things that you can do is ask a question to the panel. Uh, we have one from Ultimate Spider Plush who asks, "I've thought about what I wanted to ask for a couple seconds. So here is my question: What's the worst game that you remember playing?" And we'll just go down in order from the Discord list. Kat, what's the worst video game you remember playing?
I don't have an answer for this one.
That's it's a pretty awful game right there. I remember sticking that in my X Cube, and just just thinking, wow, this one's very confusing. It's just a bunch of squiggles.
Yeah, the boss did not make any sense at all.
Absolutely. So Lost was the worst game you remember playing.
I don't have an answer. No, I do actually have an answer. It honestly was me thinking it was either going to be this game or Final Fantasy VIII. And I really hate Final Fantasy VIII, but I at least played all the way through it. I cannot say the same for Penny Arcade Adventures. On the Rain Slick Precipice of Darkness, Episode 1, I have played nearly 1,000 games, and I have to say this is the worst one I've ever played in my life. It's incredibly boring. It's not funny at all. They have a weird customization that doesn't really work, but it does. Like, it's enough to change a character, but you don't do anything. There's nothing attached to it. It's just you're with the Penny Arcade people. And someone like me who just got the Penny Arcade game because it was on sale, and I was a trophy slut. Kind of didn't expect much from the Penny Arcade people, and I got worse than that. I am aware of their comics; they're mightily funny sometimes, but for the most part, I have to say, with this game in particular, there was nothing really funny about it. It was just trying to be a very serious 1920s type of RPG that talked about all these like weird aspects to their universe, and they were like trying to build it up in a very weird way. And it just did not work. Nothing hit at all. And I really, really wish I could get my time back with it, because like I spent like 8 hours just trying to figure out what to do with that, I swear. And I was just like, I can't do this. This is so boring. Nothing about this is fun. And I just stopped immediately. They're just like, you know what? Sometimes games aren't worth beating. They're just not. And Penny Arcade Adventures, you did it. You made me stop.
Man.
So I'd like to point out the duality of I played this for 8 hours and I stopped immediately.
I guess by Telltale Games standards, 8 hours is like barely any into the game. So
Telltale games are about 8 hours. It felt like 8 hours. I don't know how many hours I actually had in it, but it was definitely more than 3. It was more than I wanted it to be. It felt like 8 hours.
So Rabid, worst game that you remember playing?
Probably Shrek kills his own father for the Game Boy Color.
For real? And I heard that was one of the best games for the system.
Yeah, I know. I don't remember the real name of it. It's some fighting game or whatever. It's pretty bad.
Okay.
Are you talking about Super Slam?
Yeah, that one.
Well,
maybe. I don't know.
Super Slam has its own tier list, right?
I'll have to look at the list of Shrek video games.
And I forget which one that actually has a community.
Shrek Fairy Tale Freakdown is the one I'm talking about.
Okay.
Okay, so it's not Super Slam.
It received a 0.5 rating from Game Informer. So
it's a Game Boy Color game. That makes more sense.
Oh, hell yeah. I'm going to get to talk about a different game that is a 0.5 rating in a second.
Hell yeah.
TTP, how about you? Worst video game that you remember playing?
E.T.
Oh.
You know what? Yeah.
Well, there we go.
Well.
Can't get much worse than that.
Yeah, I unironically, I have played it, and oh my god. Oh boy. I don't think I need to talk about it. I can understand why it nearly caused the great video game crash.
It's not
I can understand.
Worse for something like hashed out in like a few weeks, but it's still pretty bad.
Did you say E.T. nearly created the video game crash?
Well, it pretty much did.
It was the nail in the coffin anyway.
It was like E.T. and like a couple other factors, like Atari Pac-Man also had something to do with it.
Yeah.
So like it's a few things,
Yeah, that's true.
E.T. was pretty much a nail in the coffin situation.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much. But from a visual standpoint, so I'm gonna take this a bit different. But a couple games for me, and it'd be very hard for me to I can't think of the word, but 2 games though that I personally have struggled with just from a visual standpoint that are hard, and it doesn't necessarily mean they're terrible games. It's just from my standpoint, they're not the best games. One of them is, and here's the thing: I love the soundtracks and I enjoy watching people play it, but in terms of me playing it, it's so hard. Sonic 3D Blast. That game is it's extremely difficult. I cannot my brain literally cannot compute the I can't think of the name of it. That weird 3D.
What, like depth perception or?
No,
Yeah,
you're talking about isometric 3D.
Yeah,
is what
that's
you're
it.
talking about.
Isometric.
Yes, that one. Thank you. Yes, that one. I cannot see it, and it frickin' sucks. Because I'm always missing shit, and it's rough. It's really rough. The other game, and I also struggle with it, and I've tried, and I really want to stream it sometime again, but I'm gonna need a lot of help from chat to help me through with it, and that's Sonic Lost World.
Oh boy.
I cannot visualize that opening level, and the name of it now it just went out of my head.
Windy Hill.
Thank you, Windy Hill. The weird 3D movements, like you're running along that I don't know what you want to call it, the pillar or whatnot, but like then it flips all up on you. Oh, that really messes with me.
Yeah,
I can't.
that game blows.
Oh no, you did not. You did not.
Yes, I fucking did.
Oh my god.
I would
You
like to change
people.
my answer.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
Oh my
yes,
god.
Cat.
I'm going to second Sonic 3D Blast.
Oh,
People.
there
Apparently,
you
it
go.
traumatized me so bad that I forgot it existed.
To me, is
I
that
think-
Sonic 3D Blast is one of the first 3D Sonic games I actually beat. Y'all are mean.
I think 3D Blast is like fine. I don't think it's like the greatest, but I don't think it's like the worst.
I
either.
don't think it's that good either, but like damn, the worst game you played?
Well, you kind of also have to understand TTP's problem, right? That you know.
Oh, no, I understand TTP's problem. I don't know what y'all's problem is with 3D Blast.
It's just
I don't
not
know, it's
very
just
good.
kind of mediocre.
It sucks.
That's fine. I don't think that means it's the worst.
It's not.
Y'all
There's
putting
worse
out as the
Sonic games.
worst. Yeah, there is.
Well, maybe Cat's just played a lot of good games, and comparatively, 3D Blast is the worst of them.
Is that true?
Yeah.
I mean, fair. She's able to filter out the shitty games.
Plays a bad game, immediately forgets about it.
Yep.
Welcome in, Spidey. We're answering your question. So, Josh, what is your the worst one that you remember playing?
Right, listen here, because here's a story. I actively seek out bad video games if they're culturally bad enough for the internet as a whole to go, oh, this video game is awful, dude. I gotta see it. So, I have set up like a really old PC port of Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. I played through that. I'd set up a copy of Big Rigs once, but the game that I think sticks with me the most is Ride to Hell Retribution, if anybody's heard of that.
It is. It's on top of one of the worst games list.
Yeah, definitely Ride to Hell, then, is my answer to that. And that was the one that got the... excuse me. Got the 0.5 I was talking about earlier. I've never seen a game with a 0.5 before, but it happened, and it was Ride to Hell.
Oh man.
And I had to go out of my way. I sought a Russian Steam key for that game immediately after that game shut down. They took it off distribution because everybody thought it was so terrible, and I've never seen that before. But I did get it. Ride to Hell is the answer for me.
Wow. Especially for the links that you had to go get it to. Trip, worst game that you remember playing?
I was initially going to say Sonic 06, but I first played that game 3 years ago, so I wouldn't necessarily consider that as like a nostalgic game, bad game.
Sonic 06 great.
Because growing up as a kid, I never really determined if something was bad or good. I just thought, oh, this is a thing I like. It's automatically good. So anything that I played, I enjoyed, including Sonic 3D Blast. stuff like that. But there have been a couple of things that have been, recollecting. I recall being randomly given a uh, copy of the Game Boy Advanced version of uh, Crash of the Titans. Um, Crash Bandicoot was not meant for 2D side scrolling, so it was
What
kind
do
of
you
boring.
what do you think of what's that name now? Spyro Orange, Crash Purple, whatever those two things were. Taylor, help me out on this.
That's what they were called, yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, did you get those?
I never played a Spyro game in my life, so no.
Oh.
How dare you?
So
Uh,
sad, honestly.
well, you guys would love my girlfriend. Uh,
Take him to be burned at the stakes by Spyro.
Why isn't your girlfriend on this podcast?
Uh,
She didn't ask.
I don't think that I know she's in the server, but I don't think she has the podcaster role. Or
Well,
maybe she
anyway,
does. I don't know.
those were Game Boy games, is what I was getting at.
Same reason that Tori wasn't here to give his opinions.
Well, I mean, Tori just doesn't exist on Discord, so he probably didn't know this was a thing until you told him.
Yeah. I
Uh,
told him like 3 hours ago.
yeah. So Trip, it was you'd say like Crash of the Titans on GBA.
Either that, or I remember for some reason really wanting the GameCube version of like the Finding Nemo game. And I think that was the first time where I really like said, "Man, this game sucks." Because
It has licensed video game syndrome.
yes,
Yeah. Okay.
it was like my first, probably the first game that I owned that was like a licensed game. I was like, man, this is nothing. They don't even hold a candle to the amazingness that is the movie. Um, yeah.
Gotcha. As far as me, I know I've definitely sought out like infamously bad games and played them, but I swear I can't remember like a specific one. Just one of those that are considered like the absolute worst. So I had to really like rack my brain for something to answer this question with. As far as just in general, the first thing that comes to mind, I guess, is I played the version with like Sonic plastered over it, but it's like somebody tried like porting Super Mario Brothers to the Sega Genesis. That was pretty bad. Uh, Unbelievably slippery controls and just it was awful. But like as far as like officially released stuff, all I can think of is Sonic Genesis for the GBA. But like I know I've played something worse that was also officially released. I just can't remember it right now. But yeah, for now, like that would be my answer to your question, Spidey. Um, and with that, we are complete with all the topics and the fan questions. So I would just like to thank the panel here for coming together for this one.
Yeah.
This was fun.
Cheer, buddy.
So
This
real
was
quick,
great.
real quick. Spidey says in the chat, Mario on Sega Genesis is actually good. Are you thinking of So Mario? Because I think that's a different thing from what Brandon is talking about.
Brandon was talking about Sonic 3D Blast 6 or whatever the fuck it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, though, let's be real here, Samaria isn't very good either. So,
Both are kind of shit.
yeah.
But then again, Spider Plush also doesn't like Deadpool, so he just has shit chased.
Ooh. Uh,
Oh,
so yeah. That'll be it for this episode of Memory Lane Buddies. If you'd like to be able to catch the recording of any particular episode live as it's happening, we do these every 2 months. And you can do that by being a Memory Lane Buddies viewer channel member. In the off months where we're not doing an episode, then you'll get a vote for the topic of whatever episode we're doing next. So yeah. Um, no idea what we're doing for the next one, because again, that's going to be put up to a vote. Uh, and yeah, that'll just about do it for this one. as far as like regular old streams and whatnot, the only plan that I really have is Extra Life this Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern with Trip. We're gonna do mainly the Bowser's Fury stuff and Super Mario 3D World for the Switch. So yeah, uh, and that just about covers everything. So I have been Skull 902.
Rabid Sonic fan.
Necrophilia.
No, you're not. Shut up.
And then Trip TTP, Lost Leader, and Cat Cooper. uh, for any regular streams or next time on Memory Lane, buddies, we'll catch you later, and hope that you enjoyed, and just have a good one, folks. So yeah,
200, baby. Let's go.
see you later, everybody.
1 billion streams. That's me.
Bye.
Bye.
Sonic Olympics is
Congratulations.
great.
Bye bye.
Drink your
Bye.
milk.
Boy.
Drink your milk. Cute.